You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hey everyone, welcome on into McGuire Mondays. And boy, are we excited to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are on a heater coming off back-to-back wins against Boston and Philadelphia, respectively. They have now won 5 of their last 6, 4 straight. And Pierre, as we welcome you in, Pierre McGuire, our hockey analyst extraordinaire, what excites you most about this Leafs team at this point?
The depth. It really has been good. You asked me last week, what's my biggest concern? Injuries. But how do you overcome injuries? You have depth. So when Auston Matthews goes down, Mitchell Marner and John Tavares and Max Pacioretty, they elevate. You get Auston Matthews back, you lose Jake McCabe. Look at Simon Benoit and how he elevated. Look at Philip Myers and how he's elevated. You lose a goalie like Anthony Stolarz. Look at Joseph Wall. Look at Dennis Hildeby. The depth of this team is what really excites me right now. And because of that depth, they can overcome injuries. And I think that's a huge benefit for Craig Berube and his coaching staff.
Right, especially down the stretch. And with the number of those players, then they don't have to go dip into the well at the trade deadline. Let's take a look at the Bruins game first and foremost. They won that one 6-4. Matthew Knies has a hat trick, 5 points. This guy was en fuego. When we had seen that he had been kind of quiet, let's just say, Craig Berube said he wanted to see him be reckless, quote unquote. And I guess that recklessness results in points. Maybe how have you seen Knies sort of even just elevate his game or grow in the last little while?
He's becoming a bull in a china shop. So if that's what the coach deems as being reckless, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He's not a slickster. He can't be a fancy Dan. He's not going to be like Mitchell Marner. He's not going to be like Auston Matthews. He's got to be the defensive conscience because of his back-checking presence and his speed. He's also got to be the forecheck presence because of his size and his grit and his strength. And when he does that, he can be an amazing board player. He can be an initiator on the cycle. He's a really talented kid. I remember watching him play at the University of Minnesota. Logan Cooley was there, and you could see both those guys were going to be outstanding professional players. But the thing that intrigued me about Knies is his size and his brute strength. And that makes a big difference when you're playing in the NHL every night. So you see him get those 3 goals you alluded to, and then you start the game against Philadelphia on Sunday night. You're down 1-0. And boom, who's the guy that gets to the front of the net? Who's the guy that wins a one-on-one battle? Who's the guy that puts a puck to the back of the net? It's Matthew Knies.
Right. As you mentioned, he has had quite the weekend with scoring in both of those games. And when we look sort of like ahead to playoff potential, he's been in and around the playoffs as being a guy that contributes. But maybe in what way does this sort of change the composition of the Leafs as a playoff team and how they look in the postseason?
Julie, I love the question because I look at the left side. Matthews, obviously a left winger. Max Pacioretty's a left winger. Think about the hellacious hit that Pacioretty dealt to Jack Hughes earlier this season. Then look at the hellacious hit he dealt out last night against Philadelphia. Bobby McMann is a big guy who can really skate. Steven Lorentz is a big guy who can really skate. So when you draw the line for a playoff situation and you're drawing up game plans, you look at the Leafs' size, strength, and speed on the left side. Knies is part of that. Pacioretty's part of it. McMahon's part of it. Lorentz is part of it. You're the other team's right side. You don't want to play against those guys. Mm-hmm. And so you can initiate cycle play from the net as a reference point or from the right corner as a reference point, your left corner if you're the Leafs, and you can create all kinds of mayhem in a playoff series just by being a creative coach and game planning to your strengths, which is size, strength, and speed on the left side.
Right. Well, we can't talk about the playoffs and a Bruins game without talking about the Bruins, I guess. How much of this win over the Bruins was the Leafs doing good things, and how much of it was maybe Boston is just not Boston that we've seen in the past anymore?
Well, they're definitely not Boston that we've seen in the past. Jake DeBrusk is playing in Vancouver. They don't have Hampus Lindholm right now. David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron have retired. They're not nearly the same team. Matt Grzelcyk's playing in Pittsburgh, who was a very good puck mover, very underappreciated depth puck mover for the Bruins. So when you look at the Bruins as a composite, you're saying, okay, they're the Boston Bruins. They're in a playoff position now. They're not nearly as good. Also Linus Ullmark's not right now, but he is in Ottawa. When he's healthy, he's playing. And so for Jeremy Swayman, there's a lot to carry there. And so I don't know about the Bruins, but I watched that third period of that Bruins-Toronto game because I was at a college hockey game before that. And what I would say about that is you could see the urgency in the Toronto game. And I think that's something that's got to make the management excited. It's got to make the coaches excited. It should make the fans excited. When you see urgency from your team where they're maybe not playing an A-level game and then all of a sudden they amp it up and they can, that's a real positive thing. Really positive.
What about the fact that on 2 of those Knies goals in that game, right after, 12 seconds was one of them. It was not long after that the Bruins scored, after Knies scored his second goal. Every shot that the ISO camera had on Knies as he was almost waiting for his goal to be announced was just then pure shock because the Bruins had scored right after. Yeah. If you're a coach, what do you point to as maybe being the issue of you gave up 2 quick goals after scoring goals?
Well, the other team gets paid too, so I'd be making sure internally I don't overreact to that. That's more of a film study situation because when you're in the heat of the moment, you can't get your guys panicked. Mm-hmm. But what I'd say is that's more of a film study moment. And I think they probably went over some of the foibles of those 2 goals. The Pastrnak goal is a thing of beauty, by the way. That's ripped by a guy that can be 50 to 60 goals in a season, right, depending on his health. So there's not much, but that's a next day kind of a situation as a coach. The one thing I'd say about Toronto that's impressed me, and we've talked about this right from the start, Julian, you were on it, you nailed it. They're different because they're bigger, they're more ferocious, and they're better coached in their own zone. They are. They just are. And you talked about it to start the year, and I will continue to build off that because I believe you. I think you're right about that.
Well, you said that we've been really hot on the Leafs since the start, and it wasn't just us saying, it's the Leafs' year, because I never say that. I grew up in Toronto. I left that in the past from when I used to be a Cujo fan and all that. I actually still am a Cujo fan. But, back in the day when we all just were always like, maybe it is their year. I feel as though they have reached a different level. And I do believe, as you said, the way they've been playing, Craig Berube, and the fact that it doesn't really matter who's on the ice, someone's going to be able to step up and play in that system. One of the guys back in the lineup that I was surprised to see back in against Boston was Auston Matthews. He missed 6 games recently. He had missed 15 overall. We know it's an upper body injury. He comes back and he has 3 points against Boston. He plays in the back-to-back and has 2 points against Philadelphia. Firstly, how surprised were you maybe to see him back and playing in a back-to-back situation? And I guess I'll just stay at that. How surprised were you to see him back?
I was really happy to see him back. I was a little bit surprised when I got the press report saying he was actually going to play on Saturday night. So I thought that was really positive. I think he played a little less than 18 minutes, if I remember correctly, on Saturday night. So that's a good thing. That's not overtaxing him. It looked like he handled it really well. You talked about his 3 points. Obviously, his line was very good with Marner and with Knies. Last night, I thought, especially on the game-winning goal in overtime, his feed to Morgan Riley was spectacular because he read the play. And that's a vintage Auston Matthews situation. But you could see whether it was penalty killing 5-on-5 or even on the power play, that guy wanted the puck last night. The second game in a back-to-back, as you correctly said, that excites me. You can just see he is clearly one of the best players in the league. He's definitely in the top 5 in the entire league. Depending on how you want to rate it night to night. And he can take over a game. And it's not just 5-on-5. We talked about the power play, which has to be better for Toronto. If there's one thing that needs to be better, the power play needs to be better. But the penalty kill has been pretty darn good, and he's a big part of that. He and Marner start more penalty kills, and he's been outstanding at that. Really good.
It's interesting with Auston Matthews because there was so much going on in the media last week, seeing some of the quotes that he'd said and people deducting different situations. Like I was listening to the Ray and Dregs podcast and they said, hypothetically, is this a situation where with this injury that keeps coming back, that he should just be shut down during this time while the Leafs are, it's sort of this weird part of the season. You're already doing well. As we said, people have been able to step up. Do you shut him down? But then he also then says, it doesn't look like it's like, I'm paraphrasing, but it doesn't really look like this injury is going to go away or resolve itself anytime soon. I mean, what do you make of the situation that Auston Matthews is going through and how it should be handled?
Well, the number one thing, and I've talked about this on my podcast, The Eye Test, with my partner, Jimmy Murphy, is going into the Four Nations. And I think this is really important. Obviously, the United States wants him to play, but if he's not 100% or there's a potential for him to do more damage to whatever is ailing him, he should not be playing in that event. And I've talked about that ever since he missed games. And he's such a critically important component to them having long-term success. If he were to ever injure that in basically an exhibition tournament, that would be fundamentally wrong. So if I were Brad Treliving, or even if I was Keith Pelly, who runs, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, I want our doctors to sign off that if he plays in that event, he can't do any more damage to what ails him, whatever that might be. But watching him play the last two nights, and you made some really good points, Julie. I think he's pretty healthy based on what I've seen so far.
You wouldn't assume that he had an injury just based on the fact that he looks like he slots right back into the lineup. He's able to just be the kind of the guy. I mean, it takes some time to kind of get your sea legs underneath you, but I'm curious as he hasn't played for the US since the World Juniors. Like he played on Team North America in the World Cup, which is so wild. Again, I can't wait to bring that hat out. I feel like that I bought of Team North America because it was unique. That's for sure. I was like, I'm never going to see this again. But is there maybe a component, and this is just us kind of like talking, that a player would want to play in the Four Nations? So if the injury is bearable, is there maybe like that idea where you're like, I want to go to this birthday party, so I'm sick, but I'm going to go to school because then I can go to the birthday party?
Yeah, no, but I think the biggest thing long-term for him is Stanley Cup.
Yes.
When it's all said and done, you win the Stanley Cup in Toronto, since 1967, the team hasn't even been in the Stanley Cup final. So you win the Stanley Cup, it's pretty important. It's a lot more important than the Four Nations. So my whole thing is there's no Stanley Cup. There's no Stanley Cup unless Auston Matthews is playing for Toronto. And I don't want him getting hurt in that. And so if he can't do any more damage, then let him play. But to me, as big an event as this is, it's not going to be bigger than the Stanley Cup. And it's not going to be bigger than next year's Olympics in Milan.
Right.
So
that's very, very good point.
I want to be real careful here about this whole thing with him. That's all I mean.
And even Brad Marchand had said that it's going to be a bloodbath, and he's playing for Team Canada. And you can imagine the guys will, if they, know if Auston Matthews is injured, not like they're going to target him. We don't know what goes on inside those guys' minds, but there'll be guys that might know that, hey, this is one of the top guys on one of the top teams right now. Hey, you never know what could possibly happen out there. But what we do know is that Auston Matthews is back right now, and we hope that he continues to stay healthy for himself and for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are doing very well. Now, one guy you mentioned who did get injured against Philadelphia is Jake McCabe, who scored the first goal for a defenseman since November 30th, which is, I hadn't realized how long it had been for a D-man to score. How big of a loss is it that Jake McCabe's out? And what do you make of that whole situation with Garnet Hathaway that happened?
Well, let's talk about Jake. Jake's a really important player, number one. Number two, that tandem that he formed with Chris Tanev is so important in the Leafs because it gives him a legit shutdown tandem. They can go on the road. And now with the improved play of Philip Myers, along with Morgan Riley, the Leafs really don't get caught short in any matchup situation. But what it does is it takes a lot of pressure off of Morgan. You could see Morgan played last night. I thought Morgan played great. I thought McCabe and Tanev were really good together early in that game. And then look at the growth of Simon Benoit. And look at the way Oliver Ekman-Larsson's playing. Like, the Leafs are deep on defense. They can all stop people. They can all skate. They can all move the puck. The Leafs are a hard team to forecheck because of that. And Jake's a part of that. Jake's a big part of that. In terms of the stuff with Garnett, it's a physical game. I mean, look at the hit that Benoit put on Garnett Hathaway earlier in the period, number one. Number two, Garnett bumps into Hildeby. I get it. McCabe didn't make it easy on Hathaway because he kept pushing his head into the ice.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that to a player, you got to be ready. Something's going to happen, especially with a player like Garnett, I watched Garnett play at Brown University. I saw him play at Andover playing with Chris Kreider. They were line mates in prep school in the United States. So been watching the kid play a lot. He's big, he's physical, he's nasty, and he's not afraid. He's not afraid.
Right.
And so if you're Jake McCabe, you need to know that. And I think Jake took some liberties because he was on home ice. I'm not sure he would have done that in Philadelphia. I'm not sure he would have.
Right. Well, I mean, they're going to Philly. They're playing them on Tuesday. And Dennis Hildeby, we saw him beforehand, maybe not necessarily have the strongest of outings. We were kind of worried about the depth after Stolarz and whatnot. But what did you make of his performance? He gave away a softie, I'd say, in the first goal. But what did you think about after that?
The Ty Forrester goal was a soft goal. Yeah, no, I liked it. The Forrester goal was a soft goal, but it's a good shot by Forrester coming down the wing. And it's amazing how Toronto area kids come back and haunt the Leafs. But I thought Hildeby battled back really well. I really did. I thought he made some really good saves, especially in the first period when the game was 1-0, and then it became 1-1, and it still could have gone either way. He battled. You know what's really imposing about him? He's 6'7". I don't think we talk about that enough, Julie. 6'7" in net that's athletic. That's
actually
hard,
didn't
that's
know
hard
that.
To beat that. And that's one of the gifts. Yeah, most people don't talk about it. He's a big guy. And it's the same with Stolarz, and it's the same with Wall. The Leafs have like 3 tight ends from the NFL playing in goal for them. That's pretty substantial. It's hard to beat. And that's part of that depth we're talking about with Toronto that they should be really excited about that can lead to a prolonged run in the playoffs. But no, I thought he battled really hard. I thought he made the most of his opportunity. I really did.
It's good to see for goaltending depth for the Leafs, first time sort of in quite a while as we wait for Stolarz to come back. And Wool is currently the number one. Okay, so this week they have Philadelphia on Tuesday and then Carolina on Thursday. Wrap it up with the Canucks on the weekend. What do you expect from the Leafs this week, and what would you like to see from them?
They got to get out to a good start in Philadelphia. I was really impressed with John Tortorella's team yesterday in Toronto. I think most people would say that they played a great game in the neutral zone. In fact, I think John actually said it might have been one of the best neutral zone forecheck games they played all year. They're going to try to reinvent that again down in Philadelphia tomorrow night. I don't know, on Tuesday night, I should say. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. But no, that's going to be a tough game. It's a good test. They can keep expanding their lead in the division, which is really good. The game in Carolina is going to be the battle of 2 heavyweights. I'm glad they have a day off. It's just not a back-to-back. It goes Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday home against Vancouver. Vancouver could be a little bit road weary. They start a road game tonight in Montreal on Monday. They go into Washington and then obviously into Toronto. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think the biggest thing for Toronto is just keep pushing a 4-line attack, utilizing the size, strength, and speed of your left wingers. And whomever goes into the lineup for McCabe, I can't think he's going to play Tuesday. Whomever does, just keep playing smart. Be a hard team to forecheck. And if they are, I think the Leafs are going to have a real good week. I really do.
Right. This is definitely an interesting test for them. And as we look ahead to some other interesting news, congratulations to the United States World Juniors team for beating Finland in overtime and going back-to-back in the World Junior Hockey Championships. And I think you've watched a lot of college hockey, and when you watched USA win, does it feel as though there's maybe not a changing of the guard because they've been good for a while, but like, does it feel as though maybe USA is starting to take the crown from Canada?
I don't know about taking the crown, but they've definitely become on par. They're very, very similar. One of the things that's really helped the U.S. program is obviously the national team development program, but also the strength of U.S. college hockey. U.S. college hockey is an older game. It's not a younger game like major junior is. It's a real fast game. You know, whether it's Macklin Celebrini, who played, obviously, Cale McCarr. I can go down the line and drop a murderer's row of names at you. Ryan Leonard's going to be an amazing power forward in the National Hockey League. He should be playing in the National Hockey League right now, just like Gabe Perreault should be playing for the New York Rangers right now. Those kids chose to go back to Boston College. I can go around college hockey right now. I could name you probably 15 guys that could be playing in NHL uniforms right now, and they're part of the World Junior and the progression of getting better to play in the World Junior. You know, that's going to be a big thing. I think people don't realize, you know, the development of U.S. college hockey right now is at another level. It really is. The jump, I can say this with comfort, the jump from playing Tier 2 junior to college is bigger than the jump from playing college to NHL. I mean that. So the NHL
like
is
from major
figuring out
junior,
that these college guys, major junior, there's still a little bit more of a jump because you're playing against younger guys, so you're stockpiling points against 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds.
True.
They're outside of Macklin Celebrini or Jonathan Taves. They're no 17 or Brady Tkachuk. They're no 17-year-olds playing college hockey. They're not good enough. Most kids can't play college hockey till they're 19 or 20. Well, those are age-out years for major junior players. So that's the difference, and it's really becoming apparent. It's really becoming apparent.
Really, yeah, it's very true. I remember just having covered the CHL for many years and having that always feel like it was the gold standard back in, you know, I guess I finished covering it back in 2013 maybe. And then this feels sort of like a changing of the guard, as you mentioned, a lot of these college programs and the U.S. national team development program as well helping out. So USA had a lot of swag. I'm not just saying this because I just, you know, took my oath of allegiance to the United States. I'm both Canadian and American, and I was there on New Year's Eve for Canada USA, which was
me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
we're very unbiased here on the show, but we will side with the winners in this situation as they deserve to win and they had the swag to win, and there's just the vibes around them were immaculate in my opinion.
You know, Julie, what's interesting, so from that team, you know, Ryan Leonard's going to be playing for Washington Capitals in the spring once Boston College season is over. I think Gabe Perreault, if the Rangers are still playing, he'll probably be playing for the New York Rangers. Zeev Boyum, who set up the game-winning goal last night to Teddy Stiga, he plays at the University of Denver. I watched him play so many games at Magnus Arena out in Denver or on the road. He's so good. He's owned by the Minnesota Wild. I can't see him not being on their roster as soon as Denver's season is over. And I can go down the line. There's so many guys. Danny Nelson, who's owned by the New York Islanders. He's another guy. I saw him play over in Belfast in Ireland, and obviously watch him play at Notre Dame. Like he could be on the New York Islanders right now. So there's so many guys from that team that you're going to be seeing in the NHL pretty soon. And that speaks to where I think the difference now is between major, junior, and college. Just guys are a little bit older and a little bit more physically mature, and that's why they're getting better and better all the time at the college level.
Right. Very, very great point. Hopefully we see some of those guys for some of those teams that you mentioned, if they, of course, end up making it to the postseason, which is for a different podcast for another day. Pierre, thank you so much for all your insight and analysis on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And guys, this has been Toronto Sports Rush. We will see you next time for another McGuire Monday.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.